This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Hello and welcome once again to the DreamPod from the Dreamcast Junkyard. In this episode, we welcome not one, but two senseis from the dojo of all things Shenmue to talk all things Shenmue. But first, my name is Tom, and I'm joined once again by one of my usual co-hosts. Welcome, Lewis.
Hello, Tom.
Has your cold cleared up from the last episode?
Yeah.
I did notice last time you were sounding a bit bunged up.
I've always got a cold, so yeah.
Right, enough about us and your colds and your sinuses. It's time for us to welcome our esteemed guests, who I, for one, hope are ready to get sweaty. I don't know about you, Lewis. Welcome James Brown, aka Skill Jim, and Matt Oliver of Shenmue Dojo. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. Looking forward to it.
Hi guys, thanks for having us. I think that cold must be going around, Lewis. Like I say, I've had a cold for a couple of weeks now.
Hopefully can't be transmitted virtually, so...
Sexually, virtually, I don't know.
I know they made a joke about computer viruses then, but yeah, stop that one. I'm actually surprised we haven't had you on before now, seeing as the dojo is like such an omnipresent?
Omnipresent, yeah.
I don't know, man, these big words.
I know. Getting ahead of ourselves. But we'll get into that in a little while. As I say, it's great to have you both on the show together. I think the best place to start, really, before we jump in, I'll be pretty surprised if anybody listening to this doesn't know who or what the Shenmue Dojo is, just because of how wide-reaching the website and the forum and your social media and all the podcasts and videos that you do are very well known and all around the community. But I thought it might be nice, Matt and James, if you could talk about the origins of the dojo, where it all began, and how you both got involved with it.
Wow.
Yeah, sure. So it's tough because there's been a lot of drama over the years. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we've got, like you say, we've got a decent presence that we've kind of built over the last 22 years, because the website, believe it or not, next month is going to be celebrating its 22nd anniversary. So the 20th anniversary was a big one for me and Matt, because that was kind of, we joined just prior to that in terms of becoming owners of the website. So prior to that, it was owned by a few people over the years. So I'll start at the beginning. So you're looking at 20... hang on, why am I saying 20? So year 2000, November, I believe, was when the website was first inaugurated. There you go, there's another big word for you. That probably didn't say
big word, yeah.
correctly. I probably didn't pronounce it right, but there you go. And that was by a guy called Andy Bandos, who not necessarily... Yeah, I'm sure he's still a Shenmue fan, but it's not really aware on the in the communities these days. But basically, he created the website. It was called Ryo's Place back in the day, and he then continued that into what we know today as Shenmue Dojo, along with the forums, various website changes over the years. Obviously, the site's been remade quite a few times, and to make it look more modern as the internet kind of like progressed, and we went from those pink text on a black background to what we see today as quite a well integrated website. So
basically, you modernised the dojo, whereas we never did anything with the Dreamcast Junkyard and just left it as a.
That wasn't anything about you guys. I think your website's still cool, man. But yeah, just over the years, obviously it's just been updated, and probably like every time that a new owner's been involved, he kind of wanted to do a new iteration of the website. So let me try and go. I think Andy handed it over to a guy called Hellraiser, who actually runs the Shenmue Fans YouTube now, which used to be the Dojo YouTube at one point, and then obviously he left the Dojo and he took the YouTube channel with him, which is kind of like why our YouTube channel's not as impressive to a certain extent number-wise. And then he handed it over to a guy called Yama. I don't know if any of these names are familiar with, but maybe like to Shenmue Dojo forum users, they might be familiar.
Yeah.
And then Peter Campbell, and basically he for some reason decided to give it to us, me and Matt. So yeah, and that's kind of where we're at up to this point now. And me and Matt over the last 2 years have been designing content as fast as possible, really. Matt does a lot of YouTube videos. We both do a show together. Obviously, I did the magazine, Shenmue World, which I'm sure you'll talk about a little bit later.
Oh, yeah.
I work with various other community members, for instance, the Superpass, Shenmue Passport application for phones. Just a wealth of content we've done over the last 2 years, probably, Matt. Right, Matt? Did we?
Yeah.
When did we actually start, Matt? Was that July?
It was July 2020.
Okay.
We took it. It was just because we transitioned it over, and then within a month we were looking, hell, this site's 20 years old. We need to. I think it came at a good time for us as well. When you think 20-year anniversary, it's a big milestone, and new owners want to almost make their mark a little bit. And obviously, the Kickstarter for Shenmue World launched on the 20th anniversary. I did my first interview with Ryan Payton at that time as well about Shenmue 3. It was one of the first sort of big interviews of Shenmue 3 behind the scenes that the community got hold of at the time as well. And I think that sort of, it sounds really self-serving, but it sort of was our marker in the sand that we'd taken the dojo over, and that was sort of the standard of thing we were wanting to do with it.
Obviously, I've been part of the dojo since 2001, I believe. I joined. Might have been 2002, actually, now I think about it, but it was like March time, 2002, maybe in 2003, actually. I think. But basically, the forums were like a massive part of my childhood growing up, you know, from playing Shenmue 1 back in the year 2000, Shenmue 2, etc. And then the internet becoming like a focal part of everyone's life, basically. And then forums were like the only way that you could kind of communicate to like-minded people. Obviously, you got MSN and whatever else we had back in the day, AOL, those sort of...
Yahoo groups as well, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that, yeah, over the years. But forums were kind of like, you could leave your mark, couldn't you? You could design like an essay if you wanted to, or a short post, or just any topic whatsoever, and leave it on the internet, and it's forever there to a certain extent. And then you kind of get a buzz from seeing like when people reply, and obviously the forums were like crazy active back then because they were a brand new thing, and people wanted to talk about Shenmue. People were excited about the games, and obviously at the time what was going to happen with the third game, when that was going to happen. Quite a few things happened obviously with the Xbox release, so then we were looking at like, oh, is Microsoft going to take on the series? Then there was rumours about Shenmue 3 all over the forums. So we've had these things over the years, and then dramas and that sort of stuff, and we've constantly been pining for the Shenmue 3 that we kind of never got, up until, we'll get into it, the Kickstarter announcement. But those years were like, for me, basically when I wasn't gaming, I was on the forums, and sometimes both, like refreshing the page, carry on, refreshing the page, carry on. So I think forums back then, like I say, were a massive part of my life, and the dojo left its mark on me, and that's why I assume Peter thought it was acceptable to hand over the reins to me when it came down to it, because he trusted me from back in the day, because obviously we'd known each other since these 20 years. So it's just crazy to say, actually.
It's fascinating to hear. I mean, I've been aware of you, James, online with your handle Skill Gym for, I can't even remember how long, even going back to the early days of the Junkyard. I remember you commenting on posts.
Yeah, man, that's nice to hear, actually, that you recognise my name.
Of course,
such,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I did read all the blog posts, and like you were saying at the start of the show, how you're kind of like fans of us, but we are kind of fans of you, because I walk for a living, because I work for Royal Mail, and literally podcasts are what I do. So I've had you guys on for the last however many years you've been doing it. I want to say 10 years, right? Plus,
it's
maybe
about six or seven.
Okay, sorry, I won't put that much age on you then. It feels like a lifetime though, actually, since the first, because I'm so used to hearing you guys' voices, and a mountain of other podcasts, similar sort of vein, Sega podcasts.
That's really cool. And Matt, how did you get involved then? What was your origin story, if you will, with the dojo?
It's much later than James's. I think I joined 2006, 2007 time. I was at university, had sort of a lot going on with university. I played a lot of sports at the time. I was gigging in bands as well, so I had a lot of fingers and a lot of different pies, and my youth was nuts. And the dojo was a small part of it. Shenmue, much larger. I think like that game had a massive impact on me, which I'm sure we'll talk about sort of going forward anyway. And I dipped in and out of the dojo and the community for probably something around 6-7 years. So around sort of 2013-14, I became a lot more active. And then obviously the Kickstarter for Shenmue 3 came along, became more active again, came onto the staff for the dojo in 2018. I want to say March 2018, but I really can't remember it for certain. I came on to help out with the social media side of things, doing the Facebook page, the Twitter stuff as well. And then it sort of evolved, I think, over time, took on more responsibilities with James. And then ultimately, when Peter left, it came that he needed to hand the reins over, and we were the two that seemed to fit the bill, and we took it over, and it's taken over my life since, if I'm honest.
I'm with you there, man.
So one question I do have before we move on to the actual meat of this podcast, which is, Shenmue and the series itself. I mean, you do a lot of stuff on social media and on YouTube, and I obviously tuned into one of your live streams recently, and you did seem to have quite a almost like a strong core fan base of people that you recognise, because people were chatting in the chat and you were speaking back to them on the stream. And one of the things I wanted to ask is, do you realise, or this is probably a bit of a rhetorical question, but are you aware of just how kind of important the dojo is to the Shenmue community online, and how much of a pillar it is to this game? You know what I mean? It's kind of become almost entwined with the series itself.
Yeah, I mean, it has. I mean, it's always been a long-standing pillar of the Shenmue community. I mean, it without sounding boastful, it's the oldest Shenmue website that's still on the internet. Coming up 22 years old. So I think most Shenmue fans would be aware of it. I don't think it was till we took it over we realised quite the reach it had, if that makes sense. It was always there. It was always around. It was always doing its part for Shenmue. But until we took it over, I don't think I personally realised quite how far that reach was, and quite what that core audience was. I mean, it's changed over the years as well, as owners have changed, people have come and gone, and when James and I took it over, we've taken things in a slightly different direction with the YouTube videos, the podcast, and things like that. So it's not just the forums and the website and social media, it's sort of branched out a little bit, and I think that's driven an additional core audience to it, if that makes sense, but one that we appreciate very, very much. And it's very flattering, is the word I would use, to see that there's so many people that follow the content that James and I put out, and we do it because we love it. That's why we do it. That's why we're here, and that's what it boils down to. But it is very flattering to see that we have that sort of impact on the Shenmue community, and we carry that torch for Shenmue, because it has, as we all know, it's had a very difficult history, and in theory could have a very difficult future for all we know. But we're very proud of what we do and the impact that I think that we do try and have, and we're trying to stay humble with it as well. We don't want to get arrogant about it or anything like it, because I don't think it'd serve the dojo very well. And actually over the years it's been a very humble site, and I just think I'm trying to think of the words I can use to describe it. We want to preserve that core element of Shenmue, which is its community, and that's at the heart of the dojo. It's preservation, it's community, and it's pushing Shenmue as a franchise as far forward as we can.
Yeah, for sure, Mark.
I think it's cool as well that the people who actually create Shenmue obviously have recognised what you're standing in the community, which we'll come to in a little while. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see that it's not like a role reversal, but they kind of have respect for the effort that you've put into maintaining the excitement, shall we say, for the Shenmue franchise online.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind to say, like, because that's what we strive to do, really. We try and create passionate content from, we're passionate Shenmue fans at the end of the day, and we're creating stuff that we'd want to digest if possible. Like you say, some of the people that follow the live streams, and we know them on a first name basis almost, so you get familiar with the usernames, and you know them because we speak to them so much. And it's cool, because like I say, I'm a big podcast guy, so listening to podcasts all over the years, I never assumed that at some point down the line I'd be able to make a podcast show and all these people would want to listen to it, which is crazy, because I feel like I'm shocking. I've got a shocking memory. I've got shocking talking. Some of the stuff I say sometimes is just a joke. Matt carries the show. Matt carries everything, man. When I listen to Matt and he's just talking and talking non-stop, and it's like he doesn't skip a beat in some of the stuff he says. I'm just so pleased that we did this co-ownership with him. Because if I was on my own, I'd be a sheep and deer headlights. I don't know what I'm saying.
I just talk rubbish, and then hopefully it makes sense.
But your rubbish actually does make sense, Matt. So that's cool. But yeah, I mean, everyone that supports the dojo, and I feel like that is kind of what we want to achieve. We want to kind of keep Shenmue existing, even when there's periods of time where no one's mentioning the word Shenmue. You know, we are out there each month, forcing it down people's throats almost to kind of make sure that, you know, we do see the next game in the series or the next anime show or whatever's to come in the future. And if we can kind of contribute to that, then I think we've done a pretty good job, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's at the core of everything, isn't it? It's keeping Shenmue alive. That's what we do. That's why we're here. And that's why the community exists. And we're a small part of it, I think, but an important part.
A big part of it, I think. A big part of it. It's interesting to hear you talk about like the sort of campaigning side of things, because that I would like to think that your constant production of new content, and as you say there, James, shoving it down people's throat is kind of a big part of why it's still so popular now, I think.
Yeah, we wanted to ask you guys, and I'm sure this is going to be quite an important question for the both of you, but how did the love affair with Shenmue start? I'm going to go to Matt first, I guess. Like, how did you fall in love with this game?
It was back I was at school, and I used to get Dreamcast magazine. My friends used to get it, and I just remember vividly one day, one of my friends came up to me. He literally ran at me with this magazine with Shenmue in it. So you've got to see this game. You've got to see this game. And I'm quite...
He sounds like a cool guy, to be honest. You know, running up with a Dreamcast magazine, yeah.
Like, yes. And there weren't many of us in school actually who owned Dreamcasts, so I think there was probably like a tight-knit unit who all liked it, but he ran up to me, this magazine, he was like, you've got to see this. And I'm like, okay, what is it? Because I hadn't picked the magazine up at this point. And he opened it up, and it was Shenmue, and I just remember being absolutely blown away by the graphics in it. That's the first thing that jumped out at me, which I know sounds really superficial now, but back then we'd seen nothing like that. It was ultra realistic. And then I started reading the article, and they were talking about you could do what you want, you could walk around, you could talk to who you want, you could go to the arcade. They talked about the music. They then talked a little bit about it being based off the Virtua Fighter system. I'm a Virtua Fighter fan as well. I grew up with it on the Sega Saturn, and I love that game from back in the day. And even now playing Virtua Fighter 5, I still play it. I'm not very good at it, but I still play it. And I remember then saying to my parents, right, I want Shenmue for my birthday. And Shenmue came out in the December. My birthday's very shortly after that. So I got it for my birthday off the back of this magazine. And so I had that as an impression, but that was all I had. So I'd imagined this game in my head thinking, right, this is going to blow my mind. Stuck the disc in the Dreamcast. It sounded like a rocket was going to take off because it was pushing the Dreamcast proper hard back then. And that opening cutscene, I remember just sitting there, jaw open, thinking, "What have I? Yeah, this is insane. This is unheard of. This is amazing." And obviously, we all know the opening cutscene. Landy completely destroys a WoW, kills him. The music's playing in the background. You've got the thunderstorm as the snow turns to rain, and then you move into the next day, Rio, or 3 days later, in fact. Sorry, I get my facts straight. And then you get out of Rio's bed and you start exploring the dojo. And I started, you know what I started doing? The first thing I started doing, I sat there and opened every damn drawer, every damned item out of the drawer. And I probably spent 2 hours in the Hazuki Dojo before even venturing out, because I was so enamoured that you could do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the story develops, and Shenmue is slower paced than Shenmue 2, of course, and that draws some criticism in some circles, which I can understand. But for me, it was the first game that drew me into the world. It felt real. It felt like you were Ryo Hazuki, and you were on that journey with him. And it was a place for me, who at the time my father was quite critically ill. It was an escape. It was a massive escape for me. So that world resonated even more. And then you add in the music and everything with it, and it was unprecedented to that time, to this time. And even today, I think some games still don't do open worlds as well as Shenmue does it. And that might be rose-tinted glasses a little bit, but it's the way I feel about it. And from then on, it just has such a profound effect on games and what I play today. It really does. I love story-based games. It's pretty much all I play. And Shenmue started all of that for me.
I can't really say much further than that, to be honest. What about you, James? I mean, what were your earliest interactions with Shenmue?
I mean, I'd definitely echo a lot of what Matt's saying there. I think the first time I saw it was in magazines as well. I think we all probably saw it in magazines, because magazines was such an integral part of gaming at that time, because that's how you found out about stuff before the internet, or just going into a shop, of course. But I mean, I remember that Ed Lomas article that I actually put in issue 1 of Shenmue World, where that was probably the first time of seeing this game in the official Dreamcast magazine. And like Matt says, the graphics, I think, were an instant sell, even despite like not knowing anything about the game. Just seeing how great a game could look in 1999 or whenever that issue came out, prior to the game launching, it just, there was nothing else that looked that good. So the graphics alone, that was like back when owning a console and like talking about stuff at school, games and stuff, you kind of needed that hardware, app killer game or whatever for your thing to show off to your mates, to say like, everyone's talking about the PlayStation, but this is what the Dreamcast can do. So I was always going to buy it just for the graphics alone. But then I don't know whether the $1 million question of like why I fell in love with the game, because I don't know how to express it as such. It's like, it's just something that just happened, whether it was like hitting a certain age, adolescence, and like wanting to discover different things, because up until that point, like Japan had never even entered my mind. So then you're thrust into the world of Ryo Hazuki and in Japan, 1980s Japan, and everything was like so unique, such a unique experience. The world, the characters, the culture of Japan at that point. And I think that kind of resonated with me. Obviously I was into like Hong Kong kung fu movies and stuff like that, but seeing and playing inside one to a certain extent, obviously that's Japanese, and that was like I was watching Hong Kong, like Jackie Chan and Jet Li and stuff like that. But you can make the connection because of it's a martial arts tale, and I just fell in love with it. And like Matt was going on about the detail of the world and stuff like that, these things that we're finding today even that still blow me away, that there was that much detail in these games on a Dreamcast disc. And I'll say, like, just the fact that you had like 4 discs as well kind of made it a bit special. But just some crazy detail, man. Like last couple of weeks ago, I just put a tweet out, because we've been doing like these did you know kind of tweets, just a little tiny one that was like the darts. I did one about the darts board. There was like these 5 lights on the dartboard, and every time you throw a dart, a light disappears, which obviously is that sounds like an obvious thing in today's gaming, but people hadn't even noticed that these lights keep turning off when you're playing darts. Just they went above and beyond in the details. I think of like when you go into the Hazuki basement, for instance, and you need a torch. Games these days, okay, maybe you'd find a torch and then that'd be it. You carry on, crack on, mate, kind of thing. But in Shenmue, the torch actually drains the batteries. You need to get batteries. You go in the basement, and there's like a light fitting, so you can go to the shop, you can buy a light bulb, install a light, and it's got its own separate light source, like a light source. Sorry. So obviously you got your torch as a light source. the bulb's a light source. Then there's all these candles dotted around, some like half burnt, some like candle holders with nothing in, so you can put candles in them. You can light them with matches that you bought or found, and the candles actually slowly burn. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Didn't know that, no.
So there's a dude that did a tweet the other week that was like a time lapse of a candle just burning. So like it might take an hour or something, but in game, but the candle will burn and you can replace the candle. And like I say, each one of these are like individual light sources. So honestly, the attention to detail for that room alone, which you probably spend about 5 minutes in, is why I think you can find love from this game, because it's just amazing. It's so immersive in that sense. There's loads of other things I could mention, like the seasons and stuff like that. You know how you could complete the game before Christmas.
Yeah.
So you'd never get to see Christmas. But if you spend your time playing the game, you see Christmas decorations, Santa's walking down the street, Santa Maeno. You know, wait a couple more weeks, it's New Year's Day. So you've got girls in kimonos, you've got New Year's decorations up. And then the one that blew my mind when I found it was, I was just doing a day skip. I don't know what made me think about it. I think it was because it was like cherry blossom season at the time. But the cherry tree in the Hazuki residence, you know, the one, obviously it's the part of the first opening cutscene, Landy, the lightning triggers, you see the tree, these like, it's just twigs basically, it's like sticks, really, you know, dead tree kind of looking thing. But if you somehow, I don't know if anyone actually naturally did it, but if you get to the end of March, it starts growing blossoms. It's like fucking. Sorry, can I swear? Sorry, it's just nuts.
Yeah, go for it.
It's just fucking nuts how someone developed the game to do that. That, you know, I'm sure 0.0. Honestly, mate, I don't think anyone's ever done it naturally. I was going to say I was going to come up with a number there, but I don't think anyone ever got there playing the game naturally. So for that to be there doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not just like games these days, or I don't know, maybe games those days, it just have like an on-off switch. So it'd be like a dead tree one day, and then the next day it'd be fully bloom. This is like, it's just got little petals on. Then the next day it's got like leaves. Then the next day it's got blossoms. And, you know, come a couple of weeks later, the petals are starting to fall off. You know, they've done an animation for petals falling, and then the next day there's like petals on the floor, like a different texture under the tree. And then a few days later, there's nothing on there. It's like green leaves, and it's honestly, it's those.
Yeah, the level of detail that's lavished on the game is that. I think nowadays that would be like that would be on the back of the box, you know, real life tree simulation. Whereas there, it's just in the game, and it's just like,
it's just in the game.
Notices it, then okay,
yeah, no one's going to notice it. It's crazy. It is nuts, and like you say, the weather in the game, they designed each day to have different weather, and then they went out the way to get the meteorological reports of Yokosuka from that time period and implemented that as well as like a different option. When you complete the game, you can, now I'll play the game with real world weather.
One of the odd things that I noticed about Shenmue the first time I played it is why Darren Anderton is in the game. Do you remember the footballer Darren Anderton?
Anderton? Why?
Yeah,
where was he? Who's he?
He was a sick note back in the day.
Yeah, he's a footballer from like the 90s, early 2000s. When I first started playing Shenmue, I did a couple of different blog posts about it on the Dreamcast Junkyard way back when I first started it, and I would just like there was no capture devices or anything that I had access to, so I would just take photos off the TV screen, and go, I saw this in Shenmue. This is weird or something, and. One of them was, I was in this building, and there was a picture on the wall of a Caucasian male in a white shirt. And I was like, who is that? He looks familiar. He's got curtain haircut. Anyway, I did some searching on the internet, and I'm pretty confident it's a scan of a Panini football sticker of Darren Anderton in an England shirt. I'm like, why is he?
I know what you mean now.
It might not be, because it looks like him. But
yeah, I was thinking it was like a tennis player. That kind of hairstyle, like long wavy hairstyle. Is that what you mean, kind of thing?
Well, yeah, it's just like the curtains, you know, like parted.
Curtains, yeah. Is that in the Japanese release? I might have to check. It
was the PAL version that I was playing, so maybe it was Darren Anderton because it was a UK release. But I might be completely wrong, and it might have just been a complete coincidence.
It seems like an odd thing to for a Japanese developer to, let's scan this Panini sticker.
this guy in a Euro 96 England shirt into the game, yeah.
I mean, it's quite possible. It could be like, if it's not in the Japanese release, maybe they've got like a famous Japanese singer or something, and they kind of had to like butcher something together to get rid of a likeness or something. I don't know.
Possibly. Or Darren is really popular in Japan. I don't think who knew. Guys, so we've touched on Shenmue and a little bit on Shenmue 2. Obviously, the big thing that happened in the recent past was Shenmue 3, the game that obviously many of us thought would never happen. What was the? I'm going to ask this in two parts. A, did you think it would ever happen? And B, what was the reaction when the announcement actually came? Obviously, it was one of jubilation, but what were your personal sort of experiences?
Go on, Matt, you might as well go first.
All right, yeah. I mean, it wasn't it? It was a bit of a running joke in some circles, I think, that Shenmue 3 would never happen.
Like Half-Life 3 almost, yeah.
Like
very
Dreamcast
much.
2 as well, Dreamcast 2.
Oh, remember those knock-up images of the Dreamcast 2?
Some of those are good. But you sit there and go, and I'll be honest with everybody here, there was a time where I thought, you know what, I've made my peace with it. I was taking part in the tweet-a-thons, but I'd made my peace with it. I thought, if it happens, great, but I didn't necessarily think it would. We had, obviously, the Kitsuko article back in around 2010 by Adam Dorey, who actually we speak to quite regularly now, believe it or not, and he's an absolute sound guy. I really like Adam. And I think those sorts of peaks and troughs had sort of come and gone. And then you get to E3 2015 and you're thinking there's not a lot going on. And then we get the joyous forklift tweet, which for anybody who doesn't know or hasn't seen it, Yu Suzuki chucked out a tweet of a forklift while he was at E3, which really annoyed Sony, from what I've been told.
Found at E3 was the tag, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
and the Shenmue community goes mad. So I'm thinking, right, okay, then I need to go and watch this live stream for E3 2015. So I decided to stay up because of that tweet. And I remember sitting there watching it, and they started talking about Kickstarter, and you think, okay, whatever. And then and bear in mind, you've had Final Fantasy VII at this point, and you've had Last Guardian, and I was pumped for Last Guardian. That's one of the best games on PlayStation 4, in my opinion. I love that game dearly. It's fantastic. And then that leaf fell, and I knew straight away what that was. And I couldn't believe it. And I'll be honest with you, I cried because I couldn't. Wow. It was out of disbelief. It was shock. Yeah. It was excitement. It was everything together. And when Yu Suzuki came out on stage and announced that Kickstarter, I was like, "Where's my wallet? Where's my wallet?" You know? and I think then the impact that Shenmue had on me, bearing in mind I'd been in and out of the community for a number of years at that point, that hammered home quite the impact that game had on me. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds really silly to cry about a video game. I did, and I will happily admit it to anybody. I cried at it because it meant so much to see that happen and to see all that work that community put in to come to fruition, where everybody and their dog said it will never happen. Shenmue 3, it will never happen. Get over it. And it did, and it vindicated a lot of people that day. And it's the best E3 in history. Take out Shenmue 3 before, and then you add that into it, and you're never going to top it.
I remember at the time, I don't know if this is just because it was at the forefront of like my brain, you know, I was Shenmue 3, got to get it done. But I remember at the time, like it felt like it was kind of bubbling a bit before E3. I just remember like the community was so active and intense about like, you know, let's get Shenmue played on Classic FM, and let's, you know, do all the, you know, let's get Shenmue to the top of this poll on this website, you know, and it was almost like we were kind of, you know, throwing Shenmue at everybody, you know, just so people would notice. And this is like a random memory. I remember I was in Cyprus when the E3 thing happened on holiday with my girlfriend and now fiance, but like I remember the Dixie Chicks, which is a band she really liked, confirmed a UK tour, and I'm like, they're doing Shenmue 3, and she's like, the Dixie Chicks are touring, and we were like little kids, like so excited, and yeah, that memory just sticks in my brain of like, yeah, and I was immediately on that Kickstarter back in, and yeah, it was yeah, it was kind of a mad moment for it to have actually happened. But yeah, James, sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was going to say it's something. It felt weird, like something, like say something was going to happen. I don't know why that year particularly, because the previous year we had the Yu Suzuki at GDC talk, and he was like going through like a Shenmue post-mortem or whatever they called it, and it was like he was showing like stuff that was going to happen in the future, which is insane really now looking back at it, that you'd reveal so much. He was showing like these what we call the chapter tiles, where it's like all 11 images of what he's got as his outline for the game, and he's showing that off. So at the time people are thinking like, oh, you know, he's going to make an announcement at the end of this press conference, and nothing ever happened. So it was then like, okay, did he do that because that's his closure? He's like kind of told us the story in a certain extent that, you know, people can take away stuff from that. But like you say, some coming up to that E3, I don't know what it was, like you say, whether it was a community push, maybe that maybe that GDC talk kind of thing, like reignited a bit of a passion inside us there, where it's like, you know, we've seen what's to come, we need to find out what that actually is going to happen, what that's actually going to be. So maybe there was stuff going on, just Shenmue in our minds perhaps, and then all of a sudden you see that forklift tweet, everyone's on the forums blew up. I don't know if they crashed that night perhaps, but we were all excited to watch this E3, and like Matt said, it was already a crazy show at that point. When you watch like the Easy Allies reactions, you know, they were crying at Final Fantasy, they were crying at like Last Guardian, and then bloody hell, you see Huber reacting to Shenmue 3, and you know, just watching that now gives me chills. And sat there, because I stayed up, I think I had like a little bit of a makeshift bed on the floor because it was like 3 a.m. or something. I slept until I set an alarm for like 2:45 or whatever, and obviously Shenmue was probably about an hour into the show, so it was like getting on for about 4 a.m. at this point. And then it announced, and I was shaking. I didn't want to shout too much because obviously everyone's in bed, but I remember after the show finished, I got in bed, and even though my wife was asleep, I still said to her, they've just announced Shenmue 3, like she didn't hear me or anything probably because she's just asleep. Yeah, it's like it was such a crazy experience, and one that, you know, is I don't know how that could be topped really in terms of like just the excitement and the buzz surrounding that at the time. And obviously if you go on to what happened in the Kickstarter, I know we can all pick it apart a little bit. Maybe there could have been some better communication, and you know, it got out of hand regarding the media, who kind of like ripped it a new one, which is a shame. And obviously there was the Epic deal, which caused a fuss, which when you look at that today seems a bit silly because everyone's getting free games every month on Epic, and no one seems to be battering an eyelid as much these days. But at the time it was a big deal, and then refunds, and then the media were getting the refunds wrong, that said like, oh, they're not going to give you a refund, but they were. You know, there was a lot of misconceptions and a lot of like falsatives being pushed.
Sorry, there was that thing as well where, like, because it was PlayStation who were like presenting it, and then it's like, so why are we back in the Kickstarter if PlayStation are funding it? Like, it was all this kind of like misinformation, I don't know, but like I remember I had a friend who knew nothing about Shenmue, and he's like, oh yeah, Shenmue, I heard that it's a bit dodgy what's happening with the Kickstarter. And I'm like,
and that's that was part of the problem, I think, with the Kickstarter. And James and I did an episode on the media around the Kickstarter, and actually they started that off on the wrong foot almost, that they probably should have come out quite early to say that what Sony's actual role was in it, to nullify those comments. And it took, with respect to Wisenet and everybody involved, a bit of pushing from the media to get a straight answer out of it. And then, as we say, there's other issues around the Epic deal and other things as well. So I do think it probably left a bit of a sour taste in some people's mouths due to communication. But again, I think it's a two-way street. The communication wasn't great, but also some of the media articles that came out were, in quite all honesty, false. But if you communicate better, do those articles happen? That's the thing you've got to consider with it all. And I mean, at the end of the day, the Kickstarter's been and gone. We can analyse it to death, but I do look back at it and think, and even Cedric Biscay talked about this. He's talked about this several times. He reckons had the media communication been better, he reckons it'd have broken $10 million, and obviously it didn't. It was 6.6, and that's quite a significant chunk of money when you think about the development and the budget and where that could have gone. So it did have a long-lasting impact on Shenmue 3 before the game had actually released itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can remember listening to podcasts around the time, like on quite well-known big podcasts, things like Giant Bomb, and them being almost like dismissive of Shenmue 3 because of the amount that the Kickstarter was asking for.
Yeah,
which obviously planted seeds of doubt in the more I don't mean mainstream games, but people who only had maybe a passing interest in Shenmue that weren't even ever going to back it. They were thinking, "Oh, is it only 3 million? That's not a lot for a big AAA game. What's going on there?" kind of thing. So the media could have been better, I think.
Yeah, and then you got the problem that Yu Suzuki did kind of come out and say like, well, at this figure, we can make the Shenmue that everyone wants. I think he might have touted by saying like 10 million. And then the media obviously said, oh, Yu Suzuki wants more money, as though it was a negative kind of thing. And then you just get that miscommunication in a sense. I mean, Yu Suzuki's probably just saying that like, oh, it'd be great to get 10 million because, 2 million was like, we can make the game. It's just not going to be, obviously it's only 2 million, so we can do what we can to make it as good as possible. But, if we could get to 10 million, we would definitely make, a Shenmue game worthy of the name going off the Dreamcast games. And then, like I say, people kind of blew that out of proportion, that it's a scam and Yu Suzuki just after your money. He wants to buy some Ferraris.
Yeah, it's a pyramid scheme, a Shenmue pyramid scheme. I mean, the first games were some of the most expensive games ever made, so I could kind of see where that doubt came from. But on the flip side, time had moved on, and development tools were a little bit, more, obviously,
and
more
that
developed.
That even itself, that figure's even like miscommunicated as well, because everyone was saying at one point it cost 70 million or whatever to make the first game, when in actual fact it was like 43, and that included Shenmue 2, that included like Shenmue on the Sega Saturn when they were developing it for there before they moved it to the Dreamcast. That included all the marketing and all the events that they put on, because they put on a crazy amount of events. We were talking about that the other week, like the Shenmue Premiere event, the Digital Land event, and all these events in Japan where it was like crazy. There was like 4 venues. It was like you going to a concert or something. It was like, for a game that no one had even heard of at that point, they're buying tickets based on Yu Suzuki alone because of the work he did for Sega in terms of the arcade classics, Outrun, Space Harrier, Virtua Fighter. They knew that whatever Yu Suzuki was making was going to be amazing before they even got there, so they paid the money to get the tickets. They were given like free Shenmue merch while they were there, and they were just introduced to Shenmue. And I think that's crazy in itself. I can't really see that happening these days. Like one game creates a 4-venue event. And some of the numbers were quite good. I can't remember what we said, Matt. What was the max in that Yokosuka event? Was it like,
I think they had at one event 5,000 or 6,000 attended this premiere for a video game
that they hadn't even seen.
It's mad.
I'm trying to think of a developer now who could even
pull that off.
Get like five people in a room. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, maybe like the GTA 6 thing. They could do like a GTA 6 thing.
Yeah.
Maybe before it was leaked.
Indeed, yeah. Guys, on the topic of Shenmue 3, just a bit of a wild card question for you here. I personally don't know, but maybe you do. Was Shenmue 3 ever actually started for the Dreamcast? Was development ever started, or was it just like get Shenmue 2 out the door and then let's, whatever happens next,
Matt
who knows?
kind of mentioned it when he was on about Adam Dory, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, if you go further back than that, I don't know if it was started on Dreamcast necessarily. I believe there might be some pre-production stuff somewhere, but that might have just come from the previous research they did. But there was actually a announcement on Sega Europe back in the day where they actually confirmed Shenmue 3 was in development. If our friend Nathan's still got a screenshot of it, and he's got a massive archive of Shenmue news and things that we use from time to time. They actually announced it was in development for Xbox. So how far in that was, I don't know. And then it went quiet then when they had the Adam Dory stuff. So I believe something existed on certainly Xbox.
And the other point I'll make is we saw glimpses of characters that weren't even in the Dreamcast games, like Niao-son. They had a character model for her. She was like part of that preview video where she's like walking through the snow, and obviously she was on the front cover of that Dreamcast magazine. I was on about the official Dreamcast magazine where I first saw Shenmue, that Ed Lomas article, but he did say that they used that image because it was a bit like, boobalicious at the time. Like I say, we were just turning adolescents, weren't we? So it was like they knew the demographic, I suppose. So, but seeing her back in those days doesn't make sense to me now because we didn't see her in a Shenmue game until 2019. So perhaps maybe.
So like obviously with Shenmue 3, getting released, Sega brought us Shenmue 1 and 2 remaster, which is really cool because, before then, like the only way you could play Shenmue 1 was on the Dreamcast, right?
Yeah.
And then, so that was great, and in my opinion, I don't think they would have ever released that on like modern consoles if it wasn't for Shenmue 3. So that's win, another win for our community. And what we wondered though, because there's a lot of like, I guess, negativity, I suppose, around Shenmue 3, the game itself. I don't know if it's just one of those things currently where, like, the wider gaming sphere, it's kind of cool to hate it. I personally, like, really enjoyed it, and it wasn't even a case that I was, like, kidding myself. I genuinely, like, was really happy when I was playing it and, like, really buzzed playing it and really enjoyed it. So we wanted to ask you guys, especially as you're the Shenmue Dojo, like, we're like, how do you feel about Shenmue 3 now that it's actually here?
Wow, I mean that's a big question. I think, as you touched on this, in wider gaming circles, I think it's cool to hate Shenmue. It's cool to dunk on it a bit here, and that, in some respects, it is justified. I mean, it's not for everybody, and I think I'd be kidding myself if I could sell the game to everybody.
I will apologise for our colleague Mike's previous comments on the podcast about Shenmue at this point. So, please continue.
It's okay.
But Shenmue 3 was, I think, a symptom of its development. It was a symptom of a non-static budget. Let's remember, in 2017, Deep Silver came into it as well, so the budget moved. It did go up, which was great, and it expanded the game. The core elements of Shenmue 3 were very good. It felt like a Shenmue game. It felt true to its roots, maybe not as modern as it could have been, and that is criticised, and I understand that, and I take those on board. But I enjoyed my time with it. At the core of it, it's a Shenmue game, and it's what I wanted. And having played the games 1, 2, and 3 back to back, it feels natural to go from 2 to 3, and that's a really big compliment for it. But it would be remissive of us to not look at some of the criticisms of it. The stamina system, I hated it. It was intrusive. I know, and funnily enough, it's a system that Yu Suzuki wanted to do back in the original games, but for whatever reason didn't do it, but has done it obviously in Shenmue 3 for better or worse, and worse in my opinion. And then I think the biggest thing, whether you love Shenmue 3 or you didn't like it, is we all agree on, I don't think the story did quite as much as we anticipated it would do. Now, we have had 20 years to build this up in our heads. I do think that's a factor in it. But I would have liked to have seen more sort of story. When you think of Shenmue 2, which in my mind is the pinnacle of gaming, the main story arc is excellent. You obviously got the cliffhanger at the end, but all the character development of the characters around it contribute into that bigger story, if that makes sense. And Shenmue 3 was very much a case of they did the main story as much as and as well as they could with what they had, but the stuff around it wasn't that well developed. So when you get to the ending, and I'm not going to spoil it too much, the people who join you at the ending, they haven't put that groundwork in as an example to justify their motivation for being there. So it felt a little hollow, despite there being sort of two major changes in the plot at the end of the game. I think they crammed it into the last hour, and I think Shenmue 2 did a better job of building up to that crescendo, if you like, and that peak. And Shenmue 3 didn't, and it is a valid criticism at the end of the day. But this belief, I think, that everybody in the Shenmue community hated it, it's wrong. It divided opinion, absolutely, and I would be wrong of me not to acknowledge that. But it isn't as universally hated as people would have you believe. And secondly, we wouldn't, as you say, have had Shenmue 1 and 2 HD on modern consoles had it not been for Shenmue 3. And I'm pretty damn sure we wouldn't have got the anime without Shenmue 3 as well. So it has served its purpose in some regards of giving us another game, maybe not moving the story on as much as we liked, But it revived Shenmue. It revived the franchise. It got us more games. It got us more merchandise. It got us an anime. So in that sense of the word, it definitely served its purpose. But I mean, I've gone on and
I think
maybe too much.
definitely has its flaws. But for me, but for me, it's a solid base for Shenmue 4. They can take the key good stuff out of it, develop it, focus on the story, and away you go for Shenmue 4, in my mind.
I think in a way, if they'd have just, when they had made that announcement at E3 and just said Shenmue 3 out now, but I feel like
a Sega Saturn joint.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, whereas there was this kind of like long lingering wait for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And by the time it came out, it was really weird. I remember I'd like just moved house and then Shenmue 3 like dropped on my doorstep. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, weren't expecting it.
Nice.
Well, they delayed it like 2 or 3 times as well. Keep moving the date, and I mean, again, we were like promised an extra area as well. We were promised Baishir, so it did feel like once you reached the end of Shenmue 3, like you could feel like it felt a bit rushed.
Yeah.
Like Matt's just pointed with the character development there. There is some background information on some of those characters that ended up on the website that wasn't even like really shown in the game. So that's kind of like a bit of a negative in a sense. Like a lot of what made the first 2 games so brilliant was the side characters. It wasn't just Ryo's journey. It was like his encounters with Nozomi, Joy, Shuing, all those characters. I know we got Ren did pop up in Shenmue 3, which was cool. Darren Anderton, of course, and those interactions with those, these football sticker characters, just helped to create the world as well. So I do think Shenmue 3 got the world nailed on. To be fair, though, like the environments look stunning. Bailu Village, it's just beautiful just to walk down the path from Shenfua's house to the actual village, and it felt very Shenmue. The game felt very Shenmue. Those people that hated it, I mean, I don't know particularly why they hated it coming off the first 2 if they were such big fans, because it did just feel like another Shenmue game. They got the voice acting down to a T, and I'm quite fond of the English dub, because I was just so used to it back in the day. Corey Marshall and those sort of things. Reprising his role, I really enjoyed that aspect, and they kept the dialogue for every single character, so you could go back to characters later on in the story and talk to them again, and they've got different things to say. So they kept all these kind of Shenmue elements in there, the slow pacing, going home, speaking to Shenhua. It just felt very natural. So for me, I personally loved the game as well. Like Matt's saying, I don't think as a Shenmue fan you can downright hate a game and want it remade or anything daft like that, because I think they did do the best that they could do.
You never know. Shenmue 3 remaster could be on the cards for PS5.
Wow, judging by things at the moment,
some extra content or something. Yeah, but I mean, like I say, it was a game that I think we needed as fans, and like Matt said, it's done a great job of reigniting the series, and if you want to go into like talking about the anime and stuff like that, and bringing new people to it. I mean, there's a couple of people in issue 2 of the magazine I managed to get articles on who wrote about the first experiences playing Shenmue, and starting with Shenmue 3, which is insane to me as a fan for like 22 years. Someone's picking up a game today and falling in love with it. That's kind of what we want, because that's only going to help the series moving forward if people get why we love Shenmue so much, because it is, I admit, it's quite hard to go back to, say, the Dreamcast and put in a disc and start playing and get into it. So
those deep controls, man. Those deep controls.
Tank controls. It feels so natural to us still. Like if you play it, it just feels right still. But I can imagine to a new gamer who's expecting like thumbstick, easy turning and stuff, and it can't be an easy game to get into. But again, the graphics help it on a little bit, because it still looks passable in 2022. You know what I mean? And you're not asking someone to go back to like the original Resident Evil without a remake and attempt to play that, and that's got its own little quirky voice acting in those cutscenes.
Just as a side point, I saw a video. This is completely unrelated, but I saw a video on YouTube suggested the other day. It was the original cast of Resident Evil.
Oh yeah.
Playing the first Resident Evil game. So you had
Really?
like Barry Burton.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
Chris Redfield and Albert Wesker, the actors who played them in the cutscenes, who they'd never played Resident Evil before, so they were playing it for the first time. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was so good.
I did see that advertised. I want to watch that. Yeah. For a moment then, I thought you meant they reprised the roles in the remake, and I was like, bloody hell, they come on a bit. Oscar performances.
Indeed, yeah. We've spoken a lot about the sort of the past of Shenmue, but I'm intrigued to know what your optimism is for the potential of like a Shenmue 4, and if you think that will happen, and if so, what would you like to see in it?
Well,
obviously a continuation of the story, but
yeah, I'm always optimistic. I'm never get Debbie Downer on anything. I'm always hopeful, and just, you know, we try and keep the Shenmue name out there ourselves, so we want to keep pushing until we get a Shenmue 4. We won't settle for anything less. So I'm always optimistic that we can kind of push something over the line, or they're working on it behind the scenes and haven't announced it, and we've had those 110 rumours. So these things to be optimistic about, despite some drawbacks with the anime, that, you know, the cancellation of that sort of stuff that's ongoing at the moment. But I do think Shenmue 4 is ripe to happen still. I have got no reason for saying that. It's just a gut feeling that I don't think we bring a series back after 15 odd years and then just let it die again. It just doesn't feel like the time to let something fizzle out. But in terms of what I want to see into it, like say, obviously the continuation of the story, and without spoiling the game for anyone, Shenmue 3, we do kind of know where we're heading to. So obviously I'd like to know what happens once we reach there, and I'd like to know what's going to happen between Shuing and a brother, Zimming, you know, from Shenmue 2, where her brother's on a path of revenge or whatever, and he goes off and leaves her a pendant, yin and yang pendant, and then gives half of it to Ryo, so Ryo's got half the pendant. I feel like at some point we're going to bump into him perhaps, and then he's going to see half the pendant and be like, oh, you know, where have you got that from? kind of thing. And then other than that, I'd like to see some of the Project Berkeley stuff. So that demo that was released with Virtua Fighter 3 in Japan, if you remember that disc, that had like a video on that was basically the project of Shenmue, and they showed the CGI trailer for what was to come, and there's a lot of stuff there that hasn't happened yet, like Ryo hanging off a train. I'd like to see where that takes part in the story. That'd be pretty cool. And there's like this cool sort of a shrine sculpture head thing that like opens up, and like this light emits from it. I don't know where that is, what that is. And then you've got Shenmue that, like, obviously we know she's got some weird powers going on with the dandelion lifting and the mind powers she's got in Shenmue 3, but there's a bit where she just explodes like Dragon Ball Z style, you know, all these guys go flying. So there's like a lot of interesting things there that we have pined over for so long, that we still kind of like hopeful to see what's going to happen there. Stuff with the mirrors, stuff with the trees, because obviously we got told that Shenmue tree is called Shenmue tree, and then not a lot else beyond that, really.
Not to be, like you say, a Debbie Downer, but do you feel as optimistic as for it that 4 would happen as maybe, you know, in the lead up to 3, with like, because it obviously seems like the community, I suppose, because they got 3, I feel like they're not as you know, loud as they were. I mean, obviously they're still very passionate, but maybe like to not the same extent. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's very easy. I think when you get to that goal, you've got it, and people relax a little bit. And I do think Shenmue 3 dividing some opinion probably also is a factor in that, possibly as well, that it might have nullified some people's enthusiasm, which I don't understand personally, but that's obviously on an individual basis. It's the hardest thing to do, I think, is maintain momentum. So once you've got Shenmue 3, it was almost like Shenmue 4 is naturally going to come. But I think with the cancellation of the anime, which for me was a line in the sand for the franchise, I'm very optimistic for a Shenmue 4, don't get me wrong, but it's that for me is like as a call that we can't sit there and just let it happen, because if you think and assume something's going to happen, it probably won't. And couple that in with fatigue previously from old school fans have been, we've been through the mill, haven't we, Shenmue fans? We've been through it all. It is very hard to push ourselves back up to fight again, but I truly believe that we need to be as vocal as we were for Shenmue 3 to make sure Shenmue 4 happens, which I believe it will anyway, and what I consider a little bit of an injustice around the anime season 2 getting cancelled, which the anime was fantastic and did really well for itself, which is so Shenmue, isn't it? That it finally has some success and they go, nope, cancelled. Sorry.
It's funny you mention the animation, because we were going to touch on that, and I know that you have released some quite impassioned sort of videos about the animation. I found they were really intriguing. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I haven't seen any of the animation other than clips and some like character introductions, which look so kind of faithful to what I remember from the games. It's fantastic.
The anime is great. Yeah,
I know you're a fan of the anime, Lewis. I know that much. But so I think can we talk about that a little bit? I know that the first season has been really well received by the community, and it was specifically one of the videos that you did recently, Matt, which was on the cancellation of season 2 and the sort of the outrage around that and the bemusement almost of what. How has this been cancelled when it was so well received? So your thoughts really on the first season and then the debacle of the second season being cancelled.
I'll try not to go on too much, because I did go on a bit of a rant in that video.
We will put links to the video in the show notes, so if anyone wants to see it, it's worth a watch.
I get a bit ranty when I'm impassioned.
We love ranty. We do like ranty, to be honest. So be as ranty as you want.
Get a bit ranty about it. But I mean, I love the anime. I thought it did some things very, very well. It was very fast paced, I think, and James mentioned this towards the end of the anime, the episode 13, where they sort of blitzed the Guilin section in about 5 minutes. I think that didn't quite leave the taste in the mouth that some people would have liked. I know that subsequently they would have liked an extra episode for that, but they just didn't have the money to do it, unfortunately. But sort of the extra meat and potatoes it gave around the Shenmue story, the different take on it, the different interpretation of key characters we've grown up with and love. It was excellent, but it was so true to the Shenmue story, the Shenmue feel, that I think they did a absolute stellar job of what they presented in 13 episodes. I thought it was excellent, and the reaction of the community was there to see. It was trending on Twitter every week, and was sort of branching path to other audiences as well within anime, and it was well reviewed and all the rest of it. Then going into season 2, it's weird. The merges
was season two kind of mooted at one point? Was it nailed on? Was it going to happen?
So
and then was pulled or what?
This is my understanding of it. I spoke to Jason DeMarco, I had him on the show, and he set out the plan for what a season 2 would look like, which would be half of it would be Shenmue 3, and then the other half would be beyond that, so potentially beyond the games. And in a previous tweet, someone asked him what are the chances of it, and he said a 6 or a 7 out of 10. So in your mind, you're going, okay, this is probably going to happen. Yeah. And then when they said it had been cancelled, obviously Shenmue got pulled down from the Adult Swim page. And I remember James messaged me about 3 a.m. I don't know why I was awake, but I was awake. And I saw that tweet where they pulled it down. And instantly I'm thinking, oh shit, I've got to do a damage control video here because people are going to start panicking. And then about 6 a.m, Jason DeMarco tweets out to say season 2 isn't going to happen, but they were gearing up for it. So in my mind, and I'm making an assumption here, they were at least in the planning stages, if not early pre-production, of getting that off the ground. So to cancel it at that point seemed a bit odd, but then with a merger and cost cutting, etc., and tax write-offs at Warner Brother Discovery, I can see why, because bigger franchises got hammered. I mean, Batgirl, $90 million film, bye-bye, see you later, not going to see the light of day. So what chance did little old Shenmue have, I guess? But when you look at the viewing figures, 240,000 average on Adult Swim who are watching it, that's just in America. Wow. We haven't got hard figures on Crunchyroll. I know Michael Huber quoted 1 million hits per episode. I can't verify that, but if that is the case, that's pretty good numbers for a niche franchise. So it makes no sense to cancel something like this. And I was very impassioned about it when I saw it. I was quite pissed off I saw it and I thought, what the hell is this? This makes no sense. And the video that I released is a toned down version from the one I originally recorded. I couldn't release it.
I remember you saying in the video, saying you might release it later in.
I joined it on Twitter because I used to watch anime all the time. Like literally every week, I'd like check what was being released in Japan and like write a list of which episodes to watch and all that. I was like well into it, and then the more I watched of anime, the more I just kind of got a little bit sick of it. So like I don't watch anime as much as I used to, but this was like one that I really, really enjoyed. I loved the detail of and like kind of the alternate sort of maybe even more detailed telling of some of the elements of the story.
Yeah.
Like as far as I'm aware, in the game, Ryo just has a bandage on his face, but in the anime there's actually like a whole thing where he gets slashed and then he applies the bandage, which I thought was like a great detail. But yeah, like I don't know, this is one of the more exciting animes that had come out. And actually I always assumed this would be kind of like a Game of Thrones for Shenmue, because you know how like the books didn't get written, so they like released the rest of the story in the show. Like I remember there was like, it might have been that what's it called, like that speech that Yu Suzuki did you say GDC, is that the name?
The 2014 GDC talk,
it might have been that, where he said, if we don't do Shenmue 3 we may tell the rest of the story through an anime. And obviously at the time people were like, oh, they can't do it in an anime, that's not good enough,
I know there were some people on the forums who were like, I just want to see the ending, I just wanted to do it in an anime, do it in a manga, do it in a book, do it in a novel. And we were all like, well, do it in a game first, please.
And so like I assumed that even before Shenmue 4 ever saw the light of day, maybe this would be the way the story gets wrapped up, because like
like a possibility of
yes, for this to be another sort of Shenmue being kicked down again, it feels like we were joking about earlier, it's like, it keeps getting cancelled,
it's funny, it's like it got to the same point at the end of Shenmue 2
so it
was like, have we got another 15-year wait for season 2 now? but like Matt says, the anime, the numbers are there, it's just that the fact that they did that merger and they're cutting corners, aren't they, cutting costs as best they can. I mean, when you spoke to Jason DeMarco, Matt, he did say it would be greenlit already if it wasn't for this merger. So it's a shame to hear that now, the fact that this merger's happened. And, like I say, it's another kick in the teeth for Shenmue fans, because it feels like we can't get anything right ever. There's always like something stopping us from, and I'll be honest. I don't want to see the end of the game. I know a lot of people are saying, just finish it. We had that RGT guy say the other week on Twitter, why don't they just do one more episode of the anime, an hour-long episode where they just finish the story and everyone has the closure that we deserve. But I don't want to see that. I want Yu Suzuki to do what he wants to do to get to there. If it does take, and I know he's getting old now, so maybe it's not going to take another 20-30 years or whatever, but I want to make sure that the story that he's got there that he wants to tell, he doesn't just finish it in an hour. It does need, a game like Shenmue, it needs to be as faithful as possible, in my opinion.
It seems to me like Yu Suzuki has got this vision in his head of what he wants the Shenmue games to be like, and how he wants the story to kind of unravel or unfold and then be ended, be finished. But he kind of keeps coming up against these barriers that somebody like Kojima, for example, doesn't. So he can just go off and create these random mental stories where Yu Suzuki is like,
people chuck money at him. It is the money aspect, really, at the end of the day. If they haven't got the money, I think if he had a budget of 40 million, they'd be working on it right now, wouldn't they? It's just that's the whole reason why the Kickstarter happened, I suppose. It was literally to kickstart the franchise again, and I'm not sure if the sales were good enough that they sat there in a bank with like 40 million in the bank from the sales of Shenmue 3. I don't think that is the case. So we're kind of back to square one in a sense. I know when you spoke to Cedric, Matt, potential of Shenmue 4, whatever, they were actually pitching it to publishers. So they've got something there. They've got a demo, a prototype of what could be a Shenmue 4 that they were trying to sell to companies, that we never really heard what happened. I know we had COVID, that was an issue. So
I think the biggest thing with it and the takeaway is Wisenet are working. They're making games, and we had Air Twister not too long ago, which is great fun. It's Space Harrier, Cross Panzer Dragoon type game, but it's very much in Yu Suzuki's mold, if you like. So all the time that Wisenet's there, they expanded their building, I think, last year as well. So they've got more people working there. So they've obviously got more than one project running. All the time it's there, there's a chance. And all the time that the community are loud and vocal, Shenmue 4 can happen. And that's part of the belief I think James and I hold, is that if we keep going, keep working, keep pushing the content, and keep, one more fan every time, one more fan playing Shenmue, it's another person, it's another reason to make a fourth game, and that's why we do it.
Gents, we've spoken about the games and the animation and the general community, but we want to talk a little bit more about you again. I want to talk about Shenmue World. For those people who aren't familiar with Shenmue World, it's a magazine, a tome of Shenmue-related content, articles from the community, and obviously published by Shenmue Dojo. There's 2 issues out so far. James, can you give us a potted history of where the idea came from and how you went about creating the Shenmue World book? It's more of a bookazine than a magazine, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, I liked your interpretation of, I think you said like a train station book thing, where you could, you'd often see those back in the day next to other magazines. They'd be like this weird, smaller sized, fat, chunky magazine. So I quite liked when I heard you say that, because that is kind of what it feels like. But the idea kind of came about, again, we were just celebrating or coming up to the 20th anniversary, so we were like coming up with fresh ideas really. But I was speaking to Switch. I don't know if you know Switch. He runs phantomriverstone.com.
Oh yeah.
He does a lot of like Japanese translations, articles, and cool stuff like that.
Great site as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've been reading, especially for you guys, blogs. It's like another blogging site. So I was reading through his posts, and they're always like really interesting. But one that stood out to me was Yu Suzuki's research trip to China. So as you're reading this article, it sounds like he was doing Ryo Hazuki's journey in a sense. Obviously, we all know Shenmue started out as a Virtua Fighter RPG, so he was doing his research for Virtua Fighter 2 at the time. So he went to China with a friend, and his friend sort of documented the journey, all the places they went to, what they did on each day. They went out the way to go to like martial arts places to learn or see these Boji-Kwan masters in action. And I was just reading these posts, and they were so interesting because I was thinking, like, God, this everything Yu Suzuki's seen with his eyes here, he's like creating Shenmue in his head, and these days, and I just thought this is such good content that it could do with being published. Really, I mean, it is on the internet, but to get it and get it in the hands of people to actually read would be great. So that was basically the first. The start of the magazine for me. I was speaking to Switch on other ideas that we could do for the magazine. So then I came up with like all this fan art that you see on Twitter. As soon as that person, and there's so many amazing fan artists for Shenmue especially, it's insane really the quality of fan art for a game again that's like over 20 years old, and people are still pumping it out. Just today we've had like 2 or 3 pieces. I can't believe people are continuing to create such amazing fan art. And I was thinking, like, once they tweet that out, obviously it gets retweeted and people see it, but within a couple of days, is that just lost? Is that just gone to the sands of time again? So to get that printed and on a page where people can, like, open it up in the future and be like, that amazing fan art, quality stuff like that. And then articles, I was thinking it'd be great to get fans involved, because the whole project is, like, fan-based. With fans, it's for fans, it's created for fans. And it just kind of stemmed from there, really. I started speaking to like a few people that worked with the games as well, like your Eric Calsus and Corey Marshalls, who I ended up getting some like exclusive printed interviews with. And, you know, they even went above and beyond by signing prints as an inclusion for the magazine. I remember when I was speaking to Eric, he kept coming back to me with like things, or, you know, I made a spelling mistake there, I want to change this. He kept rewriting his answers. He was very hands-on, and then I was like showing him like, how does this look? Do you think this looks okay? And he was like saying, he was like giving me tips on like layout and stuff. They were so happy to be involved with this sort of stuff. It was just heartwarming at the time. And then obviously we did the magazine on Kickstarter, and I was always a bit like thingy, like, is this going to work? We ran through the budget with Switch. We came up with all the figures on the websites where I was going to get it printed and all the extras. We had a CD made, music CD with the first issue with RyoX, some amazing Shenwave music. So I was like looking up prices of CDs and stuff, and I was thinking like, you know, we're going to need this to be, you know, thingy to get over the line to be able to create all this stuff. And honestly, the Shenmue fans are just insane. I think it was funded within 24 hours. And I just couldn't believe that, like, something that I was creating, because I'm not the most, what's the word, like, where you think like you're doing a good job kind of thing. I don't feel like you don't
promote yourself enough, and that
yeah,
kind of thing,
exactly. Yeah. You know, I'm not big-headed or anything like that, so I'm thinking like, you know, is this good enough? I'm looking at it like, what? Because I made the magazine first, so it was kind of ready basically to go. That was kind of my mentality. I wanted to release it because it was made. So if it didn't get funded, I could still throw it out there and say, you know, well, I made the first issue, here it is as a PDF or a digital thing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, ideally I wanted it to be physical, because then you get to keep it for life, don't you? It's like, and especially with retro, you know, like yourself, Matt, we collect physical games. I know there's a bit of a resurgence recently actually with magazines like Sega Powered and stuff. Of course, I'm a subscriber of Sega Powered. Megavisions have got their own magazine, you know, Sega Mania. It's cool to see these Sega branded magazines returning from fans who grew up with magazines, and that's kind of like my backstory. I grew up with all these Sega magazines from Mega Drive, Saturn, Dreamcast, and you know, that's why in the first one I contacted Ed Lamas, and I was like, well, you know, is it possible to reprint your article that you did in that first issue of the official Dreamcast magazine? Because that was like such a benchmark for me, and that's how I discovered Shenmue. And every time I've asked anyone for anything for the magazine, they've been so helpful. It's insane, really. It just shows you what just sending someone a little message or a DM can actually do if, you know, you've got a bit of proof to the pudding kind of thing. So I was like, I was showing him like, you know, this is what I've done so far, and he's like, yeah, that looks great, you know. Yeah. Was
he surprised that you were getting in touch? Because I think a lot of these people
were surprised.
They're like they did this stuff back in the day that left an impression on people like us, and then they kind of went off and did another whatever else they went and did in their career, and then, you know, 20 years later, some email out of the blue is like, you did this article in, like, you know, 1999 or whatever. It's amazing, and like you've got a massive fan following, and they're just like, yeah, by all means. Like, I didn't have any idea that any of this stuff existed. It's like I always find that
like a flash in the pan moment kind of thing. And like I remember you, Tom, when you were searching out the barber guy, I was thinking like, what was his reaction to like someone's like wanting to know the identity of this bloke from the Dreamcast advertisement days? It's just, I think the more humbled than anything that you care that much to go out your way to kind of track them down. And I mean, Ed's doing well at the moment. I think he's working for Chelsea Football Club. Oh, really? Which surprised me when I was speaking to him. But yeah, he was so helpful. He was like, you might just have to contact Dennis Publishing and just ask them if it's okay. And I contacted them and they said it was okay. So it was like one of those rare things where just everything just seemed to align. And we got the issue 1 made and done with. And then the shipping was the bastard, really, at the end of the day. I did it all on my own with my wife.
What, sending them out individually?
Like... Yeah, and you don't anticipate how hard of a task that is, especially with the amount of different items I had, because I had postcards, then the envelopes for the postcards, the CDs, like 3 or 4 different leaflets, the magazine, a poster. So just all this sort of stuff. When they delivered the magazines, I was like, oh my god, I wasn't expecting like 50 boxes, and they've only got about 10 magazines inside, and I'm like, I could barely lift one box, and I've got to carry like 50 boxes to my office. So just the legwork really is like insane, really. But I'm so pleased. I can feel proud of both issues, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, because then you did it all over again with issue 2.
Well, yeah, and you know, this time I had a bit of a better idea, I suppose, of how things were going to go. I was expecting that delivery at the door this time. But like I say, just some of the stuff we managed to do. We did a Blu-ray with issue 2, where we got all 3 of the Shenmue Gang Edition fan-made movies, which are hysterical if you haven't seen them. Obviously, they created back in the day, so it's VHS camera footage, but it's
that's
just
the charm. I think that is
the charm. Yeah, it's a pleasure to watch that sort of stuff, and for a lot of Shenmue fans, especially Shenmue Dojo fans, because obviously the dojo is behind the magazine, so a lot of those people that grew up with the dojo themselves, the forums or whatever, they were downloading those movies in like 30 file chunks, like 30 parts, 2 megabytes a file.
It's an absolutely both of the issues I have them in front of me even, and they're both absolutely beautiful. Like, they remind me of when I was a kid, I used to get like a Pokemon magazine, and it was like, because it's kind of like a specialty thing. Like, back in the day, you have a gaming magazine or a PlayStation magazine, the Dreamcast magazine, but there was like some magazines for like specific, franchises, like I said in the example of Pokemon, where it kind of reminds me of that. Like, it reminds me of a magazine, like, as you may possibly could have picked up in a newsagent's all about Shenmue, and I love that.
Yeah, you've definitely got to be a Shenmue fan to pick it up.
And it's beautiful. Like, just looks amazing. All the content in it's amazing, and obviously,
thanks guys.
Yeah, if you'd have told me back when I was like deep into get Shenmue 3, made hype, that this could have been made, I would have believed it 100%, because I've witnessed how passionate Shenmue Dojo and like the rest of the Shenmue community are. So like, this is a real love letter to the series.
And that kind of goes back to me like talking about how I don't believe in my ability, because obviously I've had to learn how to make this. Before I started, I'd never touched InDesign software before, which is what I've used to create the magazine. So I do feel like issue 2, it might just be me, but looks better than issue 1 in terms of like page layout and some of the design work there, because I've been learning over the creating both issues. So to get to the stage I am now in issue 2 is like the learning curve for myself in how to use this software, which is really cool to hear. Like you guys just you haven't mentioned like that as a negative or anything. You're saying how great it looks, and you kind of can believe in yourself a little bit more when you hear people make these comments. I've had like a lot of kind feedback from people.
Good, that's good to hear. Yeah, of course. We're always here to champion the works of people in the community, such as yourself. It's really cool, and I just echo everything that Louisa said, to be honest.
And obviously it's not all me, by the way. It's like everything inside has been created by a fan. Mm-hmm. So there's so many people that have been involved in the creation of the issues. So I think it's an amazing feat again for the Shenmue community and the dojo as a whole.
We've been quite positive up to this point on pretty much everything. There was a recent article on Hard Drive. I don't know if you're familiar with this website. It's like a sort of satirical gaming, sort of poking fun kind of website. Lewis shared this with me. I thought it was quite humorous, and I thought I'd bring it up on this pod, speaking to you guys. Where the title of the article is "Despondent Man has tried everything to get friends to try Shenmue," and I just thought,
yeah, I did see this
so
one.
Good. It's just. With that in mind, then, what do you think? What's your answer to somebody who has like sort of a negative
impression? Yeah,
an impression. Yeah, it's like it's boring, or it's impenetrable, or it's like, ooh, like I said before, I don't want to walk around with a D-pad kind of thing. Like, what do you say to somebody who's like a bit down on it?
No, I'm going to let Matt rant on this. He's going to do a really good job. But
he's been holding this in.
The clickbait style of it actually isn't as bad as some other things. It's like when you're going into it, you're thinking like, oh, there's a guy that's like trying to sell Shenmue to his friends. That sounds a bit like me, actually. All the people I've tried to talk about Shenmue to in the past who haven't been really that interested.
Did you identify with this article then? Yeah.
Well, until you start reading the article and you realise it's all absolute bollocks. Go on, Matt.
the article itself, I mean, it's not very long actually. I thought I read it and thought it's one of those. I get where they're coming from. I don't not get it. As you say, Shenmue does have its criticism. It's considered slow. The controls are dated, very tank controls. You say the D-pad. I mean, I don't know how it didn't hurt my hands when I was 14, but now it certainly does. If I play on my D-pad on the Dreamcast, maybe it's aging hands these days. I don't know. I
love the fact they've got a quote from Yu Suzuki in here that says that Shenmue 4, by his calculations, will bring the story to nearly the halfway mark. So.
To be fair, that's probably the one accurate quote in there, because I think he's gone down on record of saying like Shenmue 3 is only 40% of the way through all. So,
I mean, Shenmue. Let's not beat around the bush about it and try and take the rose-tinted glasses off it. From my point of view, a little bit here. It does have its valid criticisms, absolutely it does, and I think it'd be wrong of us not to acknowledge some of those, the goofy voice acting, which is made memes for centuries, and the controls and everything else, and the pacing that, especially with Shenmue 1. I think Shenmue 2 corrected a lot, some of the pacing issues of Shenmue 1, and actually I found when friends of mine have tried Shenmue, they've sort of played 1 because I said to them play it, and they go, I'm not too sure. I say, right, play Shenmue 2, then come back to me, and they love Shenmue 2. I think the biggest thing with Shenmue is it's a slow burner, but you have to let it in. It's not the type of game that I think lends itself well to modern sensibilities in gaming.
Yeah.
So that instant gratification that you're going to get from a God of War or something like that, or the popular comparison is Yakuza, and I absolutely love the Yakuza games. I was playing them on PS2, but that game's very much in your face. It's a little bit corny, but it's very fast-paced, action-packed the whole way through, and it gives you that sense of gratification straight away, whereas Shenmue's much more of a slow burner, and it requires you to invest your time in it. So I would say to anybody who wants to play Shenmue or is thinking about it for the first time, is to honestly sit back, take a few hours with it, forget everything, turn your mobile phone off, shut yourself away, and immerse yourself in what it's trying to do. And then if you still don't like it, fair enough, right? It is definitely not for everybody. But for the people who do get it, it's no halfway house with Shenmue, is there? You either absolutely adore it, or you absolutely hate it. There's no halfway house, and that might be part of the reason that it's not quite as successful as maybe we'd have hoped it would have been back in the day, because there's no that middle ground's not there where you get people go, I'll pick it up, it's all right. I don't know, but
yeah.
Has the term Shen Marmite ever been used?
I don't know, but that's a good terminology to go with it. I think.
Yeah, I do like that.
When we come into wider media, I said this earlier, it's cool to not like Shenmue. There's a lot of YouTubers out there who go, Shenmue's rubbish, Shenmue's this, Shenmue's that, compare it to Yakuza and slate it. But I'll just put this back out to everybody. For such a bad franchise, it tends to attract a lot of attention, doesn't it? So it's there, and like I say, some of the criticisms are definitely valid, absolutely valid, but I think they are overplayed because it's cool to be overplayed. And you look at some of the media articles that have come out about Shenmue that are wholly inaccurate, and it makes us fans, I think, look a bit maniacal because we're having to come out and correct things. I'll use the Grand Theft Auto 6 leak as an example. So I don't know if you guys remember 2017, we got the first sort of proper trailer of Shenmue 3. If you remember the Deadeye trailer with Ryo, and it came, and it was on the PlayStation channel. It got 1 million views, and it got absolutely battered, right, in the press. And they came out and said it was alpha footage, and it still got battered, and nobody batted an eyelid. GTA 6 gets leaked wrongly, and it's alpha footage, and people are going, oh, it looks like crap. Yes, because it's alpha footage. But the difference being that people came out, game developers came out and said, hang on a bloody second, our games look like this, and started releasing footage of their games at various points in alpha or pre-alpha, whatever. And my question there is, where was that for Shenmue? Where was that backup for that developer, for Yu Suzuki, for Wisenet there? And that's where I think it's a little bit hypocritical in the media that one game gets not a pass because it was leaked, but it gets treated very differently to Shenmue, which got hammered for the way it looked, and people should have known better. But I'll leave it there.
I do think half of like, you know, like I remember like the Jimquisition put out like this really sort of quite. I don't mind their content, but like their Shenmue video was like incredibly obnoxious. But to me as a fan, like, I'm kind of bulletproof, because half of loving Shenmue is like having a laugh about it, and I'm sure we've all had a laugh on this podcast today about it, you know, and it's just that kind of thing, unfortunately, you know, to love.
There's definitely a love to hate mentality for Shenmue. It's strange. I mean, like that article, it's funny, but then at the same time, it's like it's kind of unprovoked, because like why now? Why are they doing it now? Like what are they getting out of it? And I've kind of like compared it recently. Shenmue's sort of like the misunderstood kid at school. It's like people don't really know what his deal is, you know, what's going on there, why, you know, and he's an easy target, he's easy to bully, he's easy to make fun of, and he's like a certain person that understands Shenmue. I mean, myself and Matt, we understand Shenmue. It does something to us that obviously it doesn't do to these people, but it's just a shame that it kind of gets dragged through the mud so often, and I kind of don't understand that, because I don't really see that with other franchises. I don't see people attacking other games willy-nilly, if that's a word.
It is now.
It is now. But Shenmue seems to get brought up all the time, and people like to poke fun at it. They'd love to hate it for some reason, and I can't put my finger on why, whether it is because it's just so different that they, you know, it is an easy target to bully. I don't get it.
Well, that is a great rhetorical question to leave hanging there in the air, because moving swiftly on, gentlemen, we do have, drum roll please, a Shenmue quiz just for you.
Eek.
So,
as long as the first question is, why do people love to hate Shenmue?
So yeah, we've got 12 questions here for you. We were going to go with 8, then it ballooned to 10, and then it went to 12 for no reason other than I just thought, why not?
Yeah, I just want to warn you guys that Tom put some questions in here that even I, as like a mega fan of Shenmue, don't know the answer to. So hopefully,
can we work together?
Of course, yeah.
You can be.
This is literally just for you two, like as the Shenmue Dojo. I'm not involving Lewis in this. It's just, obviously he's got the answer, so it won't be very fair.
Feel a bit more confident.
You can confer. It is a little bit like University Challenge. This, so it's Dojo Challenge essentially. Dojo Challenge. Your chosen subject is Shenmue, which obviously
just imagine like James and Matt like on the screen, like above each other, like on
like University Challenge. Yeah, Shenmuedojo.com.
So I'm going to put a nice bit of music in the background, so it's all kind of atmospheric. Right, so we've got some Shenmue music playing.
Awesome.
And we've got the questions. Right, so you ready for your first question?
Let's do it.
Okay, so it's going to start easy and then get a little bit harder as we go on. So, nice easy one to begin with. What was Shenmue known as before it was called Shenmue?
Shenmuedojo.com. Is that what we talked about earlier, Matt? Like Project Berkeley? Is that what you want to go for? I mean, it did have another name, actually, but I think you probably got Project Berkeley down there.
Unless you're going really far back and going Virtual Fighter RPG.
Well, there was another one as well. Guppy or something like that. What was that, Matt? Guppy.
Back in the day. We'll go Project Berkeley, because that's
yeah, okay.
I guess.
Well, you do obviously know your stuff, because I've got Project Berkeley / Virtual Fighter RPG, but Guppy, obviously, as you well know, was also a code name for Shenmue before it was Shenmue. So yes, congratulations, that's 1 point. Okay, second, another easy one. Who voiced Ryo in the English language version of Shenmue?
Matt, do you think that's Eric Calso, is it?
That's our good old friend Corey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Corey Marshall.
Of course.
It is indeed, yeah. And obviously previous guest here on the DreamPod too, if you want to go back and listen to that, yeah. On the topic of Corey Marshall, which famous YouTuber shared a bed with him recently?
Ooh.
Not recently.
Well, is that Adam Koralik then? I can kind of picture them together. Well, I'm not suggesting they did anything in under the covers, but
it was indeed Adam Koralik. Yeah, again, it's somebody else who's been on the show with Corey as well.
All right, yeah. So going back to Ryo and voices, who voiced Ryo in the Japanese language version of Shenmue?
that's Masaya Matsukaze.
Indeed.
Spot on. I'm glad you said the name for me because I was worried I was going to not pronounce it very well.
Now you know why I asked you to read that question, Lewis. Okay, so question number 5. How much money does Ine-san leave for Ryo each morning?
500 yen.
Yeah.
On the nail.
Yeah, these guys. Yeah, Tom. I feel like Tom was. We both kind of like brainstormed questions, but I think Tom was the most evil. And this to me is just like who would know this? So, and this is like my favourite game ever. So, on what date does Shenmue 2 begin?
Ooh, that's actually quite tricky because of the save file thing. But let me try and work this out because it gives you enough time to reach Fang Mei's birthday, which is on March the 3rd. Because it's the same day my wife's birthday is. So it's definitely a date in February, Matt, I think, right?
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere around. I'm trying to think how far into February you are. Where's the 19th ring about?
I don't know. You're thinking of November the 19th, though.
I possibly am, because that's obviously the start of Shenmue 1.
I've got 21st in my head.
Should we go with that? Because I don't know.
Do you have a year as well?
Yeah, 1987 then.
Okay, so you were like so
one,
close. It's the 23rd. Obviously, you got the year correct, and Tom added 12:30 p.m. as well. It's really funny actually that you mentioned Fang Mei's birthday because that was something I suggested to Tom as one of the questions.
That was a date.
Yeah, and I love how you just sort of dropped that just casually. Because
it helps, like I say, it's my wife's birthday at the same time. So,
yeah, of course, yeah. But
2 days off, not too bad.
I don't think that many people who've played Shenmue 2 have actually got to Fang Mei's birthday, but it's definitely worth it if you are a fan of the game.
That's true. And like I was mentioning with the date, it's difficult because, especially these days with your Shenmue 1 and 2 collection, you just carry your save data over, don't you? So it's whatever day you leave Hong... Well, not whatever day, because I think there's like a... Is it like a month trip or something in a ferry?
Yeah,
a couple of weeks.
It used to be really easy on the Dreamcast. Like you'd say, oh, you like to your mate, like, go on disc 2, you can do this. But on this, it's like, how do I say discs to the people playing it on a PS4? So
that might be a better question for like the American fans who didn't get the PAL Shenmue 2.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Okay, speaking of ships, what is the name of the ship Ryo travels to Hong Kong aboard?
That's the Genpu Maru.
Yes, it is.
In the English version?
Oh, has it got a different translation?
I feel like we could give them the Japanese name.
I'm going to give you that, yeah. So basically, I don't speak Japanese, so I asked a friend of mine who does what the ship's name was, and apparently in English it's Wind of Mysteries or Mysterious Wind. That's what it translates into.
No, I don't think I've ever heard that.
I'm going to give you the point.
You're teaching us some stuff there, Tom.
Okay, so this is one I gave to this list of questions. So, in Shenmue 2, which warehouse on Fortune Pier has a big or small gambling stand with a max bet of 500 Hong Kong dollars, allowing for easy money farming by save scumming?
Oh man, that's probably the one I use as well.
Yeah.
So, what's Ren's warehouse, Matt?
So, where you meet the heavens is 8.
So it's the one to the right of that.
Yeah.
So is that going to be 9?
Go with it. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Warehouse 9.
Okay, you're one number off. It's 10.
10. Okay, so it must be. They must be like. Oh, okay. 2 sides.
But
house numbers, yeah.
Yeah, there's a tip there for any people listening who, want to give Shenmue 2 a go or are giving Shenmue 2 a go. You don't have to do the annoying box game where you move left and right. You can just go there and just get loads of money and then never have to do another job. So there you go.
That is true. So many people get caught up with that, don't they? Where they're like, oh, how do I make 500 yen for Ren? And they just like moving boxes or doing lucky hit where you literally don't make any money.
I hate that box game. It's like, why? Just carry it straight, dude. Like left, right. It's like, stop.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 9. Name the incredibly rare capsule toy that looks like a Mega Drive Tower of Power.
Ooh, God, these are quite tricky questions. I think it's got Mega in the title. Do you think, Matt?
I can't know.
Is it something like Mega Dory?
You're on the right lines if it helps.
What, with the Dory bit, or?
No, the first bit.
The mega bit.
I can picture it as well.
I can
see
picture
in
it.
my
It's got
head.
little hands, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on that one. I might have
No,
to.
I haven't got a clue.
Okay, it's Megadra Brother. Don't know if that's how you pronounce it. There's also a Dreamcast one. Can you name that one?
No, I can't actually.
No, I can't.
That's Dreamcasco.
They're based on
Dreamcast.
a comic that I can't remember
Is
the
it
name
that
of.
Sega Freaks?
Yeah, it's like a Japanese... Sega games are the best in the world comic strip. They're from there, I think.
Okay.
And I think they were removed in the HD version. They're just a Dreamcast and a Mega Drive. They're not actually the characters, which is weird. I guess they didn't have the license to that anymore, perhaps. But
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
so I didn't actually know the answer to this. So I hope you guys do. I'll be very impressed. So name the very first tech demo that Shenmue was based on.
Oh, the Tower of Babel. Is that what you're thinking?
Are we going
Hang on.
further? Are we going further back on the Old Man and the Peach Tree?
Tech demo. Oh, it could be that.
Because Tower of
Yeah.
Babel is like Kowloon, isn't it? And then you've got the
Okay.
Old Man and the Peach Tree, which sort of tested out the early Shenmue tech. And sort of
Yeah.
you were finding a martial arts master whose name was Ryo something, but I can't remember exactly who it was. So it's one of those two.
Yeah, let's go with that, Matt. That sounds
Old Man and the Peach Tree, we going with that?
Old Man of the Peach Tree. Yeah.
That is correct. And yeah, see, we're learning stuff on here as well because you're giving us extra information. So nicely done.
Yeah, brilliant. In which restaurant in Yokosuka can Mr. Yukawa be found if certain requirements are met? And I'm looking for the name of the restaurant.
Yeah, I think it's Takara Sushi. But let me think of that a second. Have you got any of the names of the sushi?
Why did I have noodles in my head?
I think it's the sushi one, Matt.
Go for it, because I'm
Is
not
that-
convinced with my answer.
Is it called
at all.
Takara? I'm getting confused with something.
You are completely correct. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
You need to have two
Nice.
Mr. Yukawa capsule toys and must visit the restaurant after 8 p.m. on the 9th day of any month. So that's thanks to Lewis for that one. That's very esoteric.
Did you get that out of
say.
Sega Powered Magazine, by the way, at issue 3, or not?
Yeah, I wrote a piece recently because unfortunately, Mr. Yukawa passed away. Like I think it was a year ago. So
Yeah.
I put together a little blog post of all like his cameos in games, and that I learnt that from Phantom Riverstone. Actually, they have a
Right,
very
okay.
cool
That's-
post on that.
Yeah, that's probably what I used, because Dean Warlock asked us to do, obviously for that issue 3 of Sega Powered, the Shenmue thing, if we could come up with like some facts, like 20 facts or something.
Yeah.
And I was going through like all the things, thinking like what we could do, and that's a really cool one that you could actually see Mr. Yukawa in the game. And it's such like Tom was saying there, like such specific parameters to get to trigger him. Again, it's another thing that no one's ever going to see, really.
It's
No,
mad,
it's
isn't it?
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so mad.
And he has in the Japanese version, I think he speaks, doesn't he? But in the Western release, he doesn't say anything. So
Yeah, maybe it's like kind of like, oh shit, and then runs off.
Lewis, do you want to do yours on the final question?
Yeah, this is evil, Tom. Why did you put this in? What is Master Chen's phone number?
Oh, I know this off by heart.
Oh, man.
Go for it, James.
Do you want me to do it?
Go on.
Okay, so it's
on.
0468 615647.
Oh, my God.
And they
My
dropped
God.
the 7
Yeah,
They dropped the 7 and the
in
reverse.
HDs.
because it was a real number.
Yeah,
Amazing.
phoned
People,
it.
they were worried about people phoning people. Well, whoever had that number.
Didn't know that.
I mean, you could go try
They
it
legitimately
on the
did it,
podcast
innit?
as prank call.
And
He
then,
picks up.
and then for an extra point, what is the key words that you have to say in order, I guess?
Go on, Matt,
Now
if
he
you wanna do
answers
that.
the phone, doesn't it? Because he goes
Yeah,
5, 7,
okay, so-
9 dragons, Mother's Earth, comrades.
Yeah.
There you go.
I am
You
thoroughly
played it too much,
impressed.
guys.
Yeah.
I'm impressed as well, yeah.
Did you know you didn't even have to type the 0468? You can just type 615647. Did you know?
I'm learning so many new things today.
Because so long I was typing the full number, and it was like, because it's a rotary phone in the game, and
Yeah,
it was like
yeah.
taking it ages to dial this number. But
That's
yeah,
part
you can
of-
drop the.
It's satisfying on those old rotary phones, though, isn't it? Doing that?
Yeah, it's just my nan used to have a rotary phone.
Yeah, we used to
actually.
have one. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Well, it
we
wasn't
did.
great, but it was interesting to have to wait for the thing to spin back around again. Can you imagine? It's like now when you show kids a floppy disk. What's that?
Dude, showing them a bloody Nokia 3310 or something. I think it's crazy that we have grown up with this tech. You know, even though like rotary phones aren't really our era. Although I'm speaking for 35-year-olds out there, but the fact that my nan had one, we did kind of grow up with that tech. So it's interesting what we've grown up with compared, like you've just suggested there. How kids these days, you watch, is it the RyoX channel or whatever, where they couldn't even figure out how to turn on old computer or something, or they didn't know how to put cassettes. That was it. They didn't know how to put a cassette in a tape player or something.
I watched one the other day with like young teenagers reacting to Linkin Park, and I was like, no, what is this? But you scored a very respectable, was it 10 out of 12? I think it was 10 or 11 out of 12. Who's counting? But it was. I'm very impressed with your Shenmue knowledge, and obviously being the Shenmue Dojo, then who else to answer all these questions almost correctly. This has been a lot of fun, guys, and it's been very educational. So all that remains for us to say is thank you for joining us on this episode of the DreamPod, and we'd like for you now to basically plug your wares, as it were. The website, the YouTube, the podcast. Like, where can people find you on the internet?
Go on, James.
Yeah, thanks, Fez. Oh, yeah, that quiz was dead fun, by the way. Personally, you can find me at SkillGym on Twitter. I literally only use Twitter, so that's where you'll find me. Dojo-wise, at Shenmue_Dojo. YouTube channel is just called Shenmue Dojo as well. It's easy to find. The magazine, Shenmue World, is just keep an eye on Twitter. I'm planning on doing a 3rd issue next year sometime. So if you're interested, like I say, I'm not particularly selling the copies or whatever. So if you want to wait till issue 3 gets announced, you'll be able to get 1, 2, and 3 if you're looking for that. We do a podcast called Shenmue Dojo Show, so you can find that where you're finding the DreamPod right now. Just search for Shenmue Dojo Show. And the only thing I'm involved in, like I say, is Suka Pass, which is Shenmue Passport. So that 4th disc that came with your Dreamcast copies of Shenmue that you can't get online with anymore unless you've got a DreamPie and all that sort of stuff. If you want to just download the app, we're kind of restoring a lot of those online elements and the offline stuff actually in an easy to use format. Did I miss anything?
You've got our Twitch channel, which is Shenmue Dojo. We stream on the 4th of every month. You'll get to hear me rant quite a lot on those, so if you enjoy a good old rant, come on down. And also,
occasionally you'll get Titch as well.
Yeah.
On the Shenmue Dojo. I think she's planning to start streaming again soon, so if you want to hear into Shenmue streams, yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else. I think that's it. We're over the standard social medias. Facebook,
yeah, we've got Facebook,
Instagram, and all that sort of stuff.
We had a TikTok at one point. We do need to update that.
Yeah.
To be fair, if you just type Shenmue into Google, you'll find the dojo, I think, pretty easily. Lewis, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at LewisJFC, and obviously on the Junkyard, where I write posts and whatnot.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at the DC Junkyard, and on the blog, the dreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. Also, you can find us on Discord and on YouTube, and again, just like the dojo, you can find us all over the internet, just basically doing our thing. Matt, James, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I've had a real blast chatting all things Shenmue with you, so thank you very much for appearing.
Thank you for having us.
Much appreciated. Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's been great.
And thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in to another episode of the DreamPod. We'll be back again in the near future with more, of this, I suppose. So, thanks for downloading. Give us a review where you can, and we'll see you on the next one. Until then, goodbye.
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Episode. We'll be back in the near future with another episode of the DreamPod. I'll start again. Thank you to you, and again. And thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in to another episode of the DreamPod. We'll be back again in the near future.